I was sitting in a restaurant when I overheard my wife say the cruelest things about me to another man. Pathetic, dull, basically a walking ATM. She had no clue her husband was 3 booths away, already mapping out her downfall. My name is Preston Wells. I'm 45, and I own a logistics company with 63 employees spread across 3 states. I spent 20 years turning one truck and a dream into a fleet big enough to move mountains, if you could afford the freight. I thought I was building safety for my family. In reality, I was painting a target on my back. Claudia and I have been married for 18 years. We've got 2 kids, Daniel, 17, knee-deep in college applications, and Iris, 14, who still thinks her dad hung the moon. At least, I pray she still does after what's about to happen. The night the ground gave way started like any routine business dinner. I was at Romano's, the fancy Italian downtown, trying to land a client out of Memphis. Big one, around $2 million a year if I closed it. I'd taken a back corner booth with high sides, the kind that makes its own little world. That's when I heard her voice. Claudia was 3 booths behind me. I almost didn't recognize the laugh. It was different, sharper, more alive than anything I'd heard from her in months. She'd told me she was meeting her college friend Sarah, a simple catch-up. This didn't sound like girlfriends reminiscing. Then she said my name, and my chest turned to ice. Preston is so predictable it actually hurts. The words had that clever tone she loves to use. He thinks paying the bills makes him some kind of hero, like writing checks equals being a real man. I should have stood up and ended it there. Instead, I froze, while my client kept asking about delivery windows and my world spun off its axis. He's got no fire left, Dwight, she went on, and the sound of another man's name hit like a freight truck. No passion, no spontaneity. It's just work, 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 and those mind-numbing stories about routes and warehouse efficiency. Sometimes it feels like I'm married to a calculator. The man's voice was deep and self-assured, the kind that made my jaw tighten. So why stay? You're only 43, Claudia. You've got time to start over. Money, she said, and I could practically hear the shrug. Preston's built a tidy little empire, and once Daniel's off to college, I won't feel bad about taking half. Then she said the worst thing I've ever heard about myself. My husband is basically just a financial safety net. I'm counting down the days until I can cash out. In that instant, sitting there while my client talked shipping schedules, I made a decision that would change everything. She would never see me coming. Somehow I finished the dinner. Don't ask me how. My mouth kept working while my head was a broken compass. The Memphis guy shook my hand, said he'd have an answer by Friday, and left, none the wiser that he'd just watched a man's world implode. Claudia was still at her table when I stood. Her back faced me as she leaned in, laughing at something Dwight said. Even from behind, the body language told the truth, the hand at her neck, the way she played with her hair. This wasn't 2 old friends catching up. This was a date. I paid, walked by, and got a clear look at him. Mid-40s, fit, in an expensive suit, the type who drives a BMW and talks CrossFit at parties. Everything I apparently wasn't. Neither of them noticed me. Why would they? To my wife, I was just an emotionless ATM. I sat in my truck for 20 minutes, watching them through the windows. Dessert came. She fed him a bite of tiramisu. He reached across and squeezed her hand. Ordinary couple stuff, except she was my wife and the man wasn't me. Then my phone buzzed. Running late with Sarah. Don't wait up. Love you. 2 words that used to mean everything suddenly felt like counterfeit bills in my pocket. I drove home in a fog, muscle memory steering through familiar streets while my mind tried to process the wreckage. Daniel was in his room, music leaking under the door as he worked on homework. Iris slept down the hall, peaceful in the glow of the night light. Our kids had no idea their mother was gearing up to blow up their lives for a midlife fling and a fatter bank account. I poured 3 fingers of whiskey and sat in my home office, staring at the family photos, our wedding, beach trips, Christmas mornings. It all looked like elaborate theater now, and I was the only one who didn't know he was acting. Claudia came in at 11:47 p.m. I heard the click of her heels, the careful way she eased the front door shut. She peeked into the office while I pretended to study shipping manifests. Hey, honey, she said, overly bright. How was your dinner? I looked up at the woman I'd shared a bed with for 18 years and saw a stranger. Productive, I said. How was Sarah? Oh, you know Sarah. Claudia replied with a dismissive wave of her hand. Same recycled lines about her ex and that awful job. Poor Sarah never changes. The lie slipped off her tongue so smoothly, I almost admired the technique. I'm heading to bed, she announced, already turning away. Don't stay up too late with those reports. She kissed my forehead, a gesture that once felt tender now reduced to a consolation prize. After she left, I sat another hour sketching my next move. This wasn't over, it was only just beginning. The next morning, I did something I hadn't done in 2 decades of marriage. I called in sick and tailed my wife. Claudia left at her usual 8:15 a.m., coffee in hand, and that practiced smile she'd been wearing lately. She told the kids she had an early client meeting, kissed them goodbye, and walked out like it was any other day at the office. I waited 5 minutes, took my personal car, not the company truck she'd spot instantly, and tucked in behind her through the morning traffic. Nothing fancy, just basic shadowing to confirm what my gut already knew. She didn't head to a marketing firm. She crossed town to a cafe called The Daily Grind, the kind of place that charges $6 for what used to cost 50 cents. I parked across the street and watched through the glass as she settled at a corner table, checking her phone every half minute like she was waiting on someone. At 9:23 a.m., Dwight strolled in, even more polished in daylight. Crisp shirt, pricey watch, and the kind of confident stride you get from never sweating payroll for 63 people. He slid into the seat opposite her like he owned the place. I couldn't hear the words, but I didn't need to. The body language had its own subtitles. Leaning in, hands brushing, her head thrown back at his jokes. This wasn't a first coffee. This was a routine. They stayed 47 minutes. I know, because I timed it, sitting in my car like a bargain bin PI. In the lot, they split for separate cars, but not before he pulled her in for a kiss far too long for a casual goodbye. My hands clamped the steering wheel so hard I thought it might crack. I followed Claudia to her real office, watched her go in as if nothing had happened. Then I drove to my own company, told my assistant I felt better, and buried myself in logistics reports. But my mind wasn't on shipping lanes, it was on strategy. That evening, I played it straight. Asked about her day, listened to the elaborate fiction about client meetings and looming deadlines. She was slick, smooth, detailed, convincing. It made me wonder how long she'd been rehearsing. How was your client meeting this morning? I asked over dinner, casual as I could. Exhausting, she said without a pause. New campaign for a restaurant chain. They want everything changed at the last minute. Daniel looked up. Which restaurant, Mom? For a split second, panic flashed across her face. Oh, it's still confidential, she recovered. You know how these things are. Our son nodded and went back to eating. I noted the crack. The lie was getting harder to carry. Over the next week, I became a man on a mission. On lunch breaks and after hours, I documented everything. Times, places, phone logs I could reach through our shared account, credit card charges I didn't recognize. The coffee shop became their pattern. Tuesdays and Thursdays, same corner table, same choreography. I started taking photos from across the street. Nothing dramatic, just future evidence. The real break came when I remembered Claudia's tech habits. Careless to a fault. Same passwords for everything. Accounts synced everywhere. For someone plotting to clean me out, her operational security was lousy. From my office computer, I accessed her cloud. What I found twisted my stomach. Hundreds of messages between her and Dwight going back 8 months, and photos I never wanted to see. Worse than the intimacy were the threads about me, about our marriage, about their timetable. Preston works such long hours he doesn't notice anything, she wrote 3 weeks ago. I could probably move in with you, and he'd think I was just staying late at the office. His reply, not yet. Wait until after the holidays. Let the kids have one more normal Christmas before you blow up their world. One more normal Christmas. As if our family were a company they planned to wind down at year-end. The most damaging texts were recent, from just 2 days after I'd overheard them at the restaurant. He seemed suspicious last night. Claudia had texted more questions than usual about my day. Maybe he's finally waking up, Dwight replied. We might need to speed up the timeline. No, she wrote back. Preston's too trusting, always has been. I could tell him the sky was green, and he'd ask which shade. We stick to the plan. Daniel graduates in May. Then we make our move. Make our move, like ending our marriage was a chess match, and I was too dumb to see the board. I printed everything, made duplicates, and stashed them in a safe deposit box at a bank across town. Then I called the best divorce attorney in the state, Rebecca Martinez, known for shielding men's assets when a marriage hits the rocks. Mr. Wells, she said after reviewing my file, your wife has made several critical mistakes. First, she documented everything. Second, she plans to wait, which gives us time to fortify your position. Third, she's underestimating you. What's our next move? I asked. Rebecca smiled. We're going to make sure that when she reaches for half of what you built, she walks away with nothing but regret. The hardest conversation of my life happened on a Saturday morning in November. I asked Claudia's brother, Quentin Hayes, to meet me for coffee, not at the Daily Grind. That place was tainted, but at a small diner on the edge of town where no one knew us. Quentin's a family therapist, 3 years younger than Claudia and far wiser about people. He's always been the level head in her family, the one who calls out bad behavior, blood ties or not. He said as we slid into a corner booth, you look like hell. What's going on? I handed him a folder of printed texts and photos. Not the explicit ones, I wouldn't do that to him, but enough to show what his sister was plotting. He read in silence, his face darkening with each page. When he finished, he set the papers down and rubbed his eyes with both hands. How long have you known? He asked. 2 weeks, I said. I've been documenting ever since. Jesus, Preston. I'm sorry, he murmured. I knew something was off. She's been different at family gatherings, distracted, secretive. I never imagined this. The kids don't know yet, I said. I don't know how to tell them. Quentin leaned in. Let me help. Daniel and Iris will need professional support, and they must understand none of this is their fault. We spent the next hour planning. He'd gently prepare them for hard news without specifics, help me find the right moment to talk, and, when this inevitably went to court, serve as a character witness. There's something else, I said as we got up to leave. I need to lock down my business before Claudia figures out what's happening. What do you mean? She's aiming for half of everything, I said. But 63 employees rely on those paychecks. I won't let her greed wreck their livelihoods. That afternoon I met with my business attorney and my accountant. We restructured the company, moving my personal shares into a trust that insulated them from divorce claims. Perfectly legal protections I should have put in place years ago. By Monday morning, the logistics firm was bulletproof. Claudia could come for half, but she'd discover the pie was far smaller than she'd calculated. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years she'd complained I focused too much on work. Now that focus would be her undoing. 3 weeks after I uncovered the truth, I made the decision that would change everything. Tuesday morning, Claudia was getting ready for another client meeting, which I now knew meant breakfast with Dwight. She hummed in the bathroom, applying makeup with a care I hadn't seen in months. Content, oblivious that her world was about to cave in. I'll be late tonight, she called, not even looking my way. Big presentation for the restaurant chain. Might not be home until after 10. The restaurant chain that didn't exist. The presentation, that was a dinner date. No problem, I said evenly. I've got late meetings too. After she left, I sat in my truck in the driveway for 10 full minutes, thinking about the call I was about to make. Once I did it, there'd be no going back, no reconciliation, no counseling, no working it out. It was the nuclear option. But she'd gone nuclear first when she decided I was just a paycheck with legs. I called Rebecca Martinez. I'm ready to file, I said. Are you sure, Mr. Wells? Once we serve her, she'll know you've been investigating. I'm sure, and I want her served at her office, in front of her coworkers. I want everyone to know who she really is. That can be arranged, Rebecca said. We'll have papers ready by Thursday. That evening I did something I hadn't done in months. I cooked for my family. Not takeout, an actual meal. Grilled steaks, roasted vegetables, mashed potatoes from scratch. Daniel raised an eyebrow at the spread. What's the occasion, Dad? Can't a man cook for his family without a reason? I joked. The truth was harder. This might be one of our last normal dinners, and I wanted it remembered for the right reasons. Claudia came home at 10:47 p.m., claiming the presentation ran long. She barely touched the plate I'd kept warm, too busy checking her phone and smiling at messages that weren't from clients. This looks wonderful, she said, distracted, perfunctory. Sorry I missed dinner. Don't worry about it, I said, watching her scroll through Dwight's sweet nothings. There will be plenty of family dinners in the future. She looked up then, maybe catching something in my tone, but I kept my face neutral. Let her believe she still held the reins. After 20 years, I'd become invisible to her. But invisible men see everything, and what I'd seen would shatter her carefully built fantasy. Thursday couldn't come fast enough. I was ready for her to finally notice me again. The process server handed Claudia the divorce papers at 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday. I know the exact time because Rebecca called me right after. "It's done," she said. "Your wife has been served." I was sitting in my truck outside Daniel's school, waiting for basketball practice to end, when my phone lit up. Claudia's name flashed. I let it go to voicemail. Then she called again, and again. By the time Daniel jogged over, sweaty and spent, I had 7 missed calls and a stream of frantic texts. "Where are you? Call me now. What is this? You can't just vanish and ambush me like this." Daniel slid into the passenger seat, glancing at the screen as another call came in. "Mom's really trying to reach you," he said. "Yeah," I answered, powering the phone all the way down. "We'll talk to her at home." The drive back was tight with silence. Daniel kept sneaking worried glances at me, clearly sensing something big was breaking. When we pulled into the driveway, Claudia's car was already there. She'd left work early, clearly in a panic. I found her in the kitchen, pacing like a trapped animal, clutching the papers. Her face was flushed, eyes blazing with a mix of fury and disbelief. "Preston," she launched the second she saw me. "What is this? Some cruel joke?" "No joke," I said evenly, setting my keys on the counter. "It's exactly what it looks like. You can't just file without talking to me. We have problems, but we can work through them. This is insane." I looked at the woman who'd spent months plotting to blow up our family and now acted shocked I'd moved first. "Like you planned to work through them with Dwight?" I asked. The color drained from her face. For a beat, she looked genuinely stunned, like she'd forgotten actions have consequences. "I don't know what you think you know," she started. I cut her off. "I know everything, Claudia. The coffee shop meetings, the texts, the plan to wait until Daniel graduates so you can take half of what I built. I know you think I'm pathetic and boring. I know you think Dwight's more of a partner than I ever was." Her mouth opened and closed like a fish out of water. She'd been caught flat-footed, unprepared for a fight she thought she'd control on her timeline. "Where are the kids?" she snapped, suddenly realizing Daniel and Iris weren't around. "Quentin picked them up," I said. "They're staying with him tonight while we sort this out." "You told my brother our private business?" "Your brother deserved to know you were about to detonate 2 families for a midlife crisis." That's when the tears started, less emotion than performance, the same routine she'd probably used on me for years. "Preston, please," she said, reaching for my arm. "We can fix this. I made a mistake, but we can get through it." I stepped back, avoiding her touch. "No, Claudia, this wasn't a mistake. It was a plan, and now I have one of my own." For the first time in our marriage, she looked at me with something like respect. Not love, not warmth, but recognition that the pushover she married was gone. She would never see me the same way again, I thought, watching her absorb the new reality. And that felt exactly right. We talked to Daniel and Iris 2 days later, a Saturday morning, at Quentin's office. I wanted neutral ground, somewhere safe to process without feeling cornered. Daniel sat in the chair closest to me, 17, trying to be a man even while I could see the scared kid underneath. Iris curled on the couch, 14, still young enough to hope it was all a terrible misunderstanding. "Kids," I began. "Your Uncle Quentin and I need to tell you what's been happening with your mom and me." "Are you getting divorced?" Daniel asked, blunt as ever, a trait I'd encouraged. It helped now, even as it broke my heart. "Yes," I said. "We are." Iris made a small sound, half gasp, half sob. Quentin shifted closer to her, a steady presence. "Why?" she asked. I thought everything was fine. This was the part I dreaded. How to explain betrayal without destroying their relationship with their mother. "Sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love," I said carefully. "Your mom has been seeing someone else and making plans that didn't include keeping our family together." Daniel's jaw tightened. "How long?" "Several months," I admitted. "I knew something was off," he said quietly. "She's been different. Distracted. Lying about where she goes." Iris was crying now, tears streaming. "Does she not love us anymore?" "She loves you both very much," I said, and meant it. Whatever Claudia had done to our marriage, she cared for the kids. This is about her relationship with me, Not with you. Where are we going to live? Daniel asked. What happens to us? You'll live with me, I said, firm. In our house, same schools, same friends. I'm going to keep your lives as normal as possible. What about Mom? Iris asked. Your mom will always be your mom, Quentin said gently. She'll still be in your lives, just differently than before. We spent another hour answering questions as honestly as we could. Daniel was angry, at his mother and at the situation. Iris was hurt and confused, trying to understand how the family she trusted could shatter so fast. As we were leaving, Daniel said, Dad, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Mom's treated you badly for months. I was starting to lose respect because you weren't doing anything. His words hit like a truck. My own son had watched me accept disrespect and was losing faith because I'd been too trusting, too passive. I should have acted sooner, I admitted. Maybe, he said, but you acted when it mattered. That's what counts. In the parking lot, Iris hugged me hard. I love you, Daddy, she whispered. I love you too, sweetheart. Everything's going to be okay. And for the first time in months, I actually believed it might be true. 3 months later, the divorce was finalized in a courtroom that felt more like a business meeting than the end of an 18-year marriage. Claudia sat across with her attorney, looking smaller, defeated in a way I'd never seen. Her thing with Dwight collapsed within weeks of the filing. Once the fantasy morphed into an actual relationship, he decided she was too much drama. The man who'd sworn to be her partner vanished the moment things got complicated. Her lawyer tried every angle to squeeze more money, but Rebecca had been meticulous. The business shields held. The asset transfers were lawful and locked in. In the end, Claudia left with her car, her personal effects, and a modest payout, enough to cover basic expenses for roughly 2 years if she was careful. Mr. Wells, the judge said, you're awarded primary custody of both minor children. Mrs. Wells will have standard visitation. The property division stands as agreed by the parties. I nodded, feeling relief braided with sorrow. This wasn't the ending I wanted, but it was the one her choices wrote. After the hearing, Claudia approached me in the hallway. She looked older, worn down by months of litigation and public humiliation. She said softly, I never meant for it to go this far. How far did you mean for it to go? I asked. She had no answer, because we both knew the truth. She intended to use me until she didn't need me, then discard me on her terms. The kids miss having you around more, I said, partly true. They were struggling with the divorce, and they were angry about the lies. Can we try to do better going forward, for Daniel and Iris? We can try, I said, but they're not little anymore. They understand, and they'll need time before they can trust you again. She nodded, eyes filling. I know I destroyed everything good we had. Yeah, I said simply. You did. 6 months later, Quentin texted. Claudia had moved out of state, Phoenix, taking a job at a marketing firm. She called the kids weekly and visited monthly, but the easy closeness they once had was gone. She's trying, Quentin told me during one of our check-ins, but she's rebuilding from zero. That's hard for someone used to being adored. Daniel started senior year with a new steadiness, no longer taking a stable home for granted. Iris was in counseling, slowly learning to trust again. Both chose to live with me full-time rather than split custody. You did the right thing, Quentin said as we watched Daniel run drills. It wasn't easy, but you protected them when it counted. I nodded, watching my son drive to the rim, recognizing he'd learned something from seeing his father fight for the family. Sometimes the hardest lessons make us stronger. 2 years after the divorce, I sat in the same diner where I'd first told Quentin about Claudia's betrayal. This time we weren't dissecting problems. We were celebrating progress. Daniel had been accepted to 3 colleges, including his top choice. His application essay was about resilience and trusting your instincts when something feels off. The admissions counselor said it was among the most mature submissions she'd read from a senior. Iris, now 16, was thriving in school and had started seeing a boy from chemistry. Polite, looks you in the eye, clears the table without being asked. She'd learned to prize respect over charm, substance over smooth talk. My logistics firm had expanded into 5 states, partly because I buried myself in work during the worst months, mostly because protecting the company forced innovations that made us more competitive. You know what I'm proudest of? Quentin asked over coffee. The kids never saw you lose control. Even when everything was falling apart, you stayed their dad first. There were nights I wanted to fall apart, I admitted, sitting in my truck after tailing Claudia to another secret meet, wondering if my life had been a lie. But you didn't, he said. You got angry, then you got strategic. He was right. The anger became fuel, not wreckage, powering me through hearings, hard talks, and the slow rebuilding of our home. Claudia was still in Phoenix. She'd started seeing an accountant, steady, decent. The kids met him on their last visit and told me he treated their mother well and didn't try to be their dad. She seems happier, Iris said afterward. More like the mom I remember when I was little. That's good, I told her, and I meant it. Whatever anger I'd carried had burned away, replaced by indifference and a focus on the future, not the past. Last month I began dating someone new. Sarah, who runs a small business consulting firm. She's divorced too, with a teenage daughter. We met at a Chamber of Commerce event, bonded over the realities of single parenting, and found more common ground than either of us expected. She's different from Mom, Daniel said after meeting her. More direct, less dramatic. Good or bad? I asked. Definitely good. Drama's overrated. Iris agreed. Sarah treats you like an equal. Mom always acted like she was doing you a favor being married to you. Out of the mouths of babes. Driving home from the diner that afternoon, I thought about how much had changed since the night I overheard the worst thing my wife ever said about me. Back then, I thought my world was ending. Turned out, it was just beginning. The house felt peaceful when I pulled in. Daniel's car was in the drive, back from a college visit. Iris's bike leaned against the garage, meaning she was inside doing homework. My family was smaller now, but stronger, built on truth instead of lies, respect instead of convenience, and love that didn't require pretending to be someone you're not. 2 years ago in that restaurant booth, I learned something important. Sometimes the worst thing someone can say about you is the most freeing, because once you know exactly where you stand, you can finally choose where you're going.